Hey everyone, my name is Joseph, and I'm 26 years old. The day my grandfather locked the door of our old garage, he believed it would never open again. My father stood there, without saying a single word. My mother quietly wiped away her tears. For almost 50 years, that little garage had been the only thing keeping our family alive. Now, we were about to lose it forever. Everyone said, this old family garage is finished. They were wrong, because one day, that same garage would become one of America's biggest auto companies. This is my story. Before we start, if you enjoy emotional family success stories like this one, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Your support inspires us to create more powerful stories every week. Now, let's begin. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. Long before I was born, my grandfather opened a small auto garage with nothing but a toolbox and a dream. Years later, my father joined him. Together, they repaired thousands of cars. That little garage wasn't just a business. It was our family's entire life. But times changed. Big repair companies opened across the city. Customers slowly stopped coming. Bills kept getting bigger. One cold evening, my grandfather placed the garage keys on the old workbench. Then he looked at my father and quietly said, "I think this is the end." I looked at both of them. At that moment, I made the biggest decision of my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my grandfather, sitting alone inside that empty garage. The next morning, I walked into my office. I looked around, then handed my resignation letter to my manager. He looked surprised. He asked, "Joseph, are you sure?" I smiled and replied, "My family needs me more than this job." When I reached home, my mother became worried. She said, "Joseph, what if this doesn't work?" I held her hand and answered, "Mom, if we don't fight for our dream, we'll lose it forever." My grandfather remained silent. Then he slowly handed me the old garage keys. The following Monday, I unlocked the garage before sunrise. Dust covered every corner. Old tools hung on the walls. Everything looked forgotten. For 3 hours, no customers came. Then, an old pickup truck stopped outside. An elderly man stepped out. He looked around and asked, "Is this garage still open?" I smiled and replied, "Yes, sir, and we'll fix your truck like it's our own." I worked all day. When I finally finished, the man shook my hand. Then he said, "I'll be back, and next time, I'll bring my friends too." That one customer gave me something I'd almost lost: hope. The first month was harder than I ever imagined. Some days, only one car came. Some days, no cars came at all. There were nights when my father quietly paid the electricity bill with his savings. My mother packed lunch every morning, so I wouldn't spend money outside. My grandfather came to the garage every afternoon. He never complained. He simply sat in his old chair, watching me work. One evening, he looked at me and said, "Joseph, don't count the cars. Count the trust you're building." I never forgot those words, because I knew our family's biggest success had only just begun. One morning, a local delivery company walked into our garage. They had 6 broken vans. The manager looked at me and said, "Can you repair all of them before Monday?" I had never handled a job that big, but I looked at my grandfather. He nodded. I smiled and said, "Yes, we'll get it done." For 3 straight days, my father, my grandfather, and I barely slept. On Monday morning, every van was ready. The manager smiled. Then he said, "From today, you're our official repair shop." That single handshake changed everything. For the first time in years, cars started lining up outside our garage. My father smiled while repairing engines. My grandfather laughed again. My mother brought homemade lunch for everyone. It felt like our family had finally found hope again. But our biggest challenge was still waiting. One afternoon, a developer visited our garage. He handed my grandfather some papers. The land had been sold. We had only 90 days to leave the property. My mother began crying. My father looked at the empty floor without saying a word. I folded the papers and quietly said, "We're not losing our dream again." I decided to do something crazy. I applied for a business loan. Everyone told me the bank will never approve it. The manager studied my application. Then he asked, "Why should we trust you?" I answered, "Because my family has spent 50 years earning people's trust." He looked at me, closed the file, and said, "We'll call you next week." That week felt longer than my entire life. 7 days later, my phone rang. It was the bank. My hands were shaking. The manager said, "Joseph, your loan has been approved." I couldn't believe it. I drove straight home. When I handed the papers to my grandfather, tears filled his eyes. He whispered, "Our dream isn't over after all." Months later, we opened our brand new garage. It was bigger, cleaner, and fully equipped. On opening day, my grandfather unlocked the front door. Then he handed me the keys. He smiled and said, "This garage belongs to the future now." That was the proudest day of my life. As time passed, people didn't come because we were the cheapest. They came because they trusted us. Some customers drove for hours just to repair their cars at our garage. One customer smiled and said, "If Joseph's family can't fix it, nobody can." That sentence spread across the city. One evening, I stood outside our new garage. The parking lot was full. My father stood beside me. He quietly asked, "Joseph, do you think Grandpa ever imagined this?" I smiled. Then I looked at our family name on the building and answered, Dad, we're only getting started. Because deep inside, I knew one successful garage, soon wasn't enough. Customers kept increasing every month. Some people waited for days just to get an appointment. One evening, my father looked at me and said, Joseph, it's time to build another garage. I smiled, because that had always been my dream. Would never be enough. 6 months later, we opened our second location. This time, we hired young mechanics who wanted a chance to prove themselves. My grandfather walked through the workshop, smiling proudly. He whispered, this family dream is becoming something much bigger. One morning, a transportation company contacted us. They owned hundreds of vehicles. After inspecting our work, the owner smiled and said, from today, your company will maintain our entire fleet. It was the biggest contract our family had ever received. As our business continued growing, people stopped calling it the old garage. Instead, everyone knew it as Joseph Auto Group. Every new customer, every repaired vehicle. On my grandfather's 80th birthday, I invited our entire family to the garage. Outside the building, a new sign was covered with a black cloth. When my grandfather pulled it away, he froze. The sign read, Miller Family Auto Group. I looked at him and said, Grandpa, this company will always carry your name. He couldn't hold back his tears, reminded us how far we had come. That evening, my father quietly walked over to my grandfather. Then he said, Dad, you thought your dream was ending, but it was only beginning. For the first time in years, the 3 generations of our family stood together inside the same garage, smiling. 10 years after that difficult day, our company had several successful garages across Michigan. Hundreds of families depended on us for their jobs. Thousands of customers trusted our work. The same people who once said, this old garage is finished, now proudly recommended us to everyone they knew. Sometimes, people ask me, Joseph, what's the secret behind your success? I always smile and give the same answer. Our success didn't begin with money. It began with one old garage, one grandfather who refused to stop dreaming, patrons who never stopped believing, and a family that never gave up. Today, whenever I unlock the doors of our company, I still remember that tiny garage where everything began. Because I learned one lesson I'll never forget. Family dreams never die, as long as someone is brave enough to keep them alive.